407 years ago our fathers brought forth on this continent a new nation, conceived in liberty, and dedicated to the proposition that all men are created equal.
Now we are engaged in a great civil war, testing whether that nation, or any nation so conceived and so dedicated, can long endure. These powerful words delivered by Abraham Lincoln at Gettysburg capture the very soul of the conflict that tore America apart. The American Civil War, fought from 1861 to 1865, was more than just a series of battles. It was a brutal, soul-searching struggle over the nation's identity and its future.
So, what led brother to fight against brother? At the heart of the division was the institution of slavery. In the South, an agrarian economy built on cash crops like cotton and tobacco relied heavily on the forced labor of millions of enslaved African Americans.
Southern society and its economy were inextricably linked to slavery. As one Southern planter might have argued, this is our way of life, our heritage.
The federal government has no right to interfere with our property or our institutions. Conversely, the North was rapidly industrializing, while racism was still widespread. A growing abolitionist movement morally condemned slavery as a profound evil. An abolitionist in Boston might declare, "How can we call ourselves a land of the free when millions are held in chains?"
This is a stain on our nation's soul that must be cleansed. This fundamental disagreement fueled the debate over states' rights. Southern states championed the idea that they had the right to govern themselves without federal interference, especially regarding slavery.
Northern leaders, however, believed in a strong central government to preserve the Union and, for some, to eventually end slavery. The election of Abraham Lincoln in 1860, a candidate from the anti-slavery Republican Party, was the final straw. Fearing their way of life was under threat, 11 southern states seceded, forming the Confederate States of America. War became inevitable. The first shots were fired at Fort Sumter, and the nation plunged into conflict. Early Confederate victories, like the First Battle of Bull Run, shocked the Union and proved the war would be long and bloody. But the tide began to turn. The Battle of Antietam in 1862, the single bloodiest day in American history, provided Lincoln the strategic victory he needed to issue the Emancipation Proclamation. This was a game-changer.
It declared that all enslaved people in Confederate-held territory were, thenceforward, and forever free. The war was no longer just about preserving the Union. It was now a fight for human liberty.
An African-American soldier in the Union Army might have written in his journal, "For the first time, I am not fighting for their freedom, but for my own. With this uniform, I carry the hopes of my people."
We are no longer property. We are men, fighting for a new dawn. Nearly 200,000 black men would serve in the Union Army and Navy, their courage and sacrifice proving essential to the war effort.
In July 1863, the Battle of Gettysburg marked a decisive turning point.
After 3 days of brutal fighting, Union forces repelled General Robert E. Lee's invasion of the North.
The Confederacy would never again mount such a significant offensive.
Lee's surrender to Ulysses S.N.
Grant at Appomattox Courthouse in April 1865 finally brought the war to an end. The Union was preserved, but the nation was in ruins. What followed was a period known as Reconstruction, an ambitious and tumultuous attempt to rebuild the South and integrate nearly 4 million newly freed African Americans into society. For the first time, black men could vote, hold political office, and seek education. The 13th, 14th, and 15th Amendments to the Constitution were passed, abolishing slavery, granting citizenship and equal protection, and securing voting rights. A formerly enslaved person during this time might have expressed a sentiment of cautious hope. We are free. We can own land. Our children can learn to read. We can build our own communities. It is a new world, a world we were told we would never see. But this progress was met with fierce and violent resistance. White supremacist groups like the Ku Klux Klan emerged, using terror and intimidation to suppress black voters and reassert white dominance.
A political cartoon from the era might show a black voter being threatened at the polls, symbolizing the immense danger they faced.
A southern white farmer struggling to rebuild might have felt resentment, saying, "They've turned our world upside down.
We've lost everything, and now we're being ruled by those we once owned." Backed by Yankee soldiers by 1877, Reconstruction had largely failed. Federal troops withdrew from the South, and the old power structures quickly returned. Southern states began enacting Jim Crow laws, a complex system of segregation and disenfranchisement that effectively stripped African Americans of their hard-won rights.
Separate but equal became the law of the land, but in reality, it was anything but equal.
Communities were subjected to inferior schools, housing, and public services, and lived under the constant threat of violence.
The journey from the ruins of the Civil War to the full realization of civil rights would be long and arduous. The promises of freedom and equality, forged in the fires of war and codified in the Constitution, would be denied for another century. The legacy of this era is complex, a story of incredible progress and heartbreaking setbacks. It reminds us that the fight for justice is a continuous struggle, and that the questions raised by the Civil War still echo in our society today. It's a history we must understand to truly comprehend the America we live in. Thank you for joining me on this journey through one of the most pivotal chapters in American history. If you found this insightful, please like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell for more deep dives into the stories that shaped our world. See you next time.